Which first-year college football quarterbacks do you trust, and which ones do you believe will be busts?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. More attention to detail. There's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's show, we're going to talk about some quarterbacks that aren't making much movement in terms of progress, some first-year quarterbacks that were really disappointing in week one. And also some of those teams may struggle. But we're also, for the majority of the show, going to talk about quarterbacks that did well. First-time transfers, quarterbacks that made not just an improvement for their team, but an improvement for themselves, probably from their expectation. And maybe that changes the direction for their win totals, changes the direction for whether or not they can not only make the playoff, but do something with it. We're going to go across the country. We're going to talk about Tennessee. We're going to talk about Duke. But we're going to start about the biggest, maybe surprise for me, was Dante Moore out west for the Oregon Ducks. Now, this is a guy that I had as the number one player in the country in 2023. But he went to Oregon after he went to UCLA. He transferred last year, then set out. Maybe that year sitting out for Dante, because now he's a third-year college player, but it's the first time he's really been put on a pedestal to be the guy. Maybe this is his chance, and he's just seizing it. It's enough time to figure it out. He's a highly intelligent kid. He was an elite student at Martin Luther King in Detroit. I don't think he's a guy that is going to shy away from competition. I've seen him play a number of times, but I also think that he's a guy that really didn't have any way to be graded because he hadn't really had any significant reps for the Ducks. But here are the numbers, and I know they didn't play much competition first game against Montana State, but 18-23, 78.3%, 213 yards, 9.3 yards per attempt. Out of all the stats, this is the guy that probably surprised me the most in that area. I thought they would just dink and dunk and just run the ball against them, not show anything for the next few weeks, honestly, Dan Lanning and the Ducks before they play Penn State. But 3 touchdowns, no picks. Dante didn't put the ball in harm's way very much. He looks better physically. He can run around a little bit more, avoid the rush. I think if you're a Ducks fan, take this for however you want. This is my biggest take on the show. Oregon is a much higher contender for the title this year than I originally thought. And it's because of Dante Moore. And if you don't feel that way, that's fine. Go watch the game. Go watch highlights. Go watch their next game, whatever you want to do. The Oregon Ducks have plenty of D-line talent, O-line talent, and that's where it always starts for the truly elite programs in college football. And they've got some young running backs, receivers, etc., stepping up. Same thing in the secondary. They're going to be in pretty good spot. And if Dante continues to elevate his game, there's no reason to think that the Ducks not only will be good, but they could be the best program in the Big Ten by the end of the year because he's probably got the most growth. He's only been there now going into the second year with some new receivers. They're going to need Dante to keep getting better. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's easier, for instance, for Julian Sayin. I'll talk about him soon. He had a pretty good performance against Texas. We'll talk about him in another episode, but he's thrown to Jeremiah Smith, Carnell. Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, they've got guys. Let's see what Dante does. If I'm right, that's going to be a really interesting team come November. Talking about the Oregon Ducks. Now let's move to the other side of the country. A quarterback that is not near the pocket passer traditionally, at least that's what we thought, but can really move with his legs. The legs were still there, but the arm talent and the accuracy was way better than anticipated, and that is Tommy Castellanos for the Florida State Seminoles. 9 out of 14, 152 yards. He didn't throw touchdown passes, but he did have a rush for a score. 18 total carries, that includes sacks, for 80 yards and a touchdown. If you take away the sacks, he had close to 100 yards rushing against the Alabama Crimson Tide, and he made the right decisions as a transfer portal quarterback for Florida State. to come in, run the football. They ran for 230 as a team. They ran over Bama, and he just kept making the right play after the right play after the right play, including 2 deep shots. The one to Squirrel White was an absolute dime, and he also hit a streaking Jalen Lucas down the right sideline, both of them actually down the right sideline. Key plays. If Tommy Castellanos passes the football like that and continues to get out of bad plays, and additionally, he also throws the ball away when he has to, slides when he needs to, all those little things that a veteran quarterback is expected to do. Why not Florida State as a team that could contend for the ACC title? I said it. Florida State, a team coming off 2 wins, they looked a lot better than most of the teams in the ACC. They looked better than Clemson did, who was my prohibitive favorite to win the Atlantic Coast Conference. We'll see, but I think they are certainly in the conversation. And I also think that it's going to be interesting in a few weeks because another guy in the ACC looked pretty good that I wasn't sure because he was coming off elbow surgery, and that is Carson Beck. Transferred from Georgia to Miami, played pretty well, wasn't awesome against Notre Dame, but much like Castellanos, he didn't cause his team any real harm. He got away with 1 touchdown. By the way, that catch by C.J. Daniels was unbelievable. That was not an advisable throw. I'll give you that. But he still put it where his guy can make a play, and that's about the one thing that I could really pick on Carson Beck about. It ended up being a touchdown. If that's the only thing, then you did pretty good. He had 12 consecutive completions. He helped them go on a game-winning drive, and he managed his team well. Miami, maybe they're the favorite to win the ACC now. They certainly have good players in the trenches. C.J. Daniels, among other players. How about Malachi Tony throwing the football? Their secondary was better than what I thought it would be. Maybe he is going to be able to help them get to the ACC title and get Miami back into a national relevant situation. Why not? He certainly earned it in game 1 against a quality Notre Dame defense. And here's the irony. I didn't do this by mistake. Florida State hosts Miami October 4th. So Castellanos against Beck. We're going to have a great game in about a month. I'm really looking forward to that matchup. Both teams should be, keywords, should be undefeated if they hold serve at home and do the things they should. Although Miami does have a game against Florida. We'll see. I picked Florida preseason to win that game, but Miami's better than I thought. Florida better bring their A game. We'll see what happens. But Florida State, Miami, and Doak Campbell, even if the Gators were to win at Miami, is going to be huge to see which team gets a chance to go to the ACC title game. I think at least one of them will be there based on the early returns. When we come back, we're going to talk about some more quarterbacks that started really good. Then we're going to get into a few that were just absolutely laying clunkers. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Hey, fans. This is an opportunity for you. If you're still paying full price for gas, I don't care if you're a Florida State fan. I don't care if you're a Bama fan, USC. Everybody likes saving money on gas, so stop leaving money behind. Get real money cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play and start earning cash at the pump today. Use this limited time promo code football and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 in a year just by buying gas, and you got to buy it anyway. You may have thought, man, this is not possible. It's too good to be true, but it is legit. The Upside app is there for you to save money on gas. So don't let this offer drop by. Download the free Upside app now and use limited time code football for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code football. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. This show is also brought to you by our friends over at Mazda, because the moments do more than win. They push what's possible. That's what's great about college football. Again, it doesn't matter what team you root for, Ohio State, Florida, or anybody else. Those moments are awesome, and they remind us to go that extra yard, to shift into the extra gear, and keep moving the game forward. For Mazda, it's the same thing. Talk about a clutch play. How about the throw from Carson Beck to C.J. Daniels against Notre Dame for the touchdown? That was one of the most incredible plays by a receiver I've seen in a long time. Give him credit. That was a breakout moment for C.J. Daniels, a transfer portal guy from a transfer portal quarterback. So hats off to both of them. When you follow them, what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning, and that's where you get more from every highway. There's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day, each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Truly appreciate you stopping in. Please like and subscribe and become an everydayer. And we would also like to hear from you. We have something that we're curious about. We want to know what you think of not just this podcast, but others. Locked On ACC, Locked On College Football, Locked On Seminoles, Locked On any other channel, Locked On NBA, you name it. We want to know what you think. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Anyone that completes the survey, you get entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. That's pretty cool. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thank you for helping us out. All right, now let's talk about a few more quarterbacks that I was pretty impressed with this past weekend. One, I was just curious, and he's got a big game this coming week. Illinois goes to Duke, and they're going to be facing a quarterback in Darian Mensah that started off hot. Now, Elon played better than expected against Duke's defense. It was closer than it should have been. Probably a little bit of we don't think we have to play hard. Welcome to dealing with college kids, but I guarantee you they'll be fired up this next weekend when they play Illinois. But Darian Mensah, 27 of 34, transfer portal quarterback from Tulane that went to Duke, 79.4%, 389 yards, 11.4 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no picks. His offensive grade on Pro Football Focus, 94. That's insane. Big time throws, 4 of them. In a season, if you get upwards of 20, you're doing really good. He got 4 in one game. He's on pace for 48. I don't think that's realistic, but that puts it in perspective. If he continues to play like this, and I said before the season, FanDuel had Duke at 6.5. I'm like, that's a little low. But if he plays like that, there's 0 chance they're not going over that. Quarterback play at that level, you're going to win football games. Again, they got Illinois coming up, and they could completely fall apart. It's only been one game, and it was against Elon. But you got to give Mensah some credit. And from what I had heard about him when he transferred from Tulane to Duke is that he could make reads after the snap. It is the end-all, be-all to eventually play in the National Football League. You can like that or dislike that, but if you do not have the ability to make reads when the defense changes their look after the snap, you're not going to play in the NFL. Well, you got a sophomore quarterback that can do that. You're headed in the right direction. And I'm not saying he's a finished product, by the way, but he's certainly headed in that direction. And there's no reason to believe that Darian Mensah won't be a guy that ends up being one of the contenders for ACC Player of the Year. He's got some pretty good pieces around him. It's not the same talent at Ohio State or maybe Miami or Texas or something like that, but he's still got some pretty good players around him, and he's just a smart quarterback. Could they wreck Illinois' chance this coming weekend? Illinois is a team that's on that fringe for maybe making a chance to go to the playoff. Who knows? And maybe Duke, kind of like Miami, kind of like Florida State. Why not us? Why couldn't we make it to the ACC title game? You got to give them some credit. They kind of turned it on towards the end. They were lackluster at some parts of that game against Elon, but Mensah was a major reason they got over that top, and big game against Illinois coming up for them. Also want to talk about Joey Aguilar, quarterback for Tennessee. This is an interesting player for 2 reasons. Obviously, the whole Nico Iamaleava situation. This kid transfers out to UCLA, then Nico's going to UCLA. So he leaves, he goes to Tennessee where Nico was. So that's all in itself just a wild story. One of the wildest that I've ever covered in college football. And it's also interesting because if you look at it, he had a pretty good game, and there's discussion, well, maybe against Syracuse, he played well enough. Maybe we had a slight improvement over Nico. I don't know if that's realistic or not, because you just don't know how Nico would have played. But give Joey Aguilar credit. He didn't get any spring practice with the Vols, just that summer and fall camp. That's not enough. You need as many reps as possible with your receivers, especially a group like the Vols that had a lot of inexperienced players. Here are his numbers. And again, he's playing a Power 4 opponent. This isn't Elon like, Duke played against in Mensah. Aguilar was 16 of 28, 253 yards, 3 touchdowns, 9 yards per attempt. Okay, his percentage wasn't great. It was 57.1, but if you're going to throw for 253 and 3, you still had a pretty good game. And he also had 32 yards rushing. Most importantly, though, the question about him, will he turn it over? That's a concern. But he didn't do it against Syracuse. If they trend in the right direction, and by the way, give credit to Tennessee's coaching staff. They've got a very good offensive staff. If he trends in that way, they got Georgia on their schedule, they got Bama, etc. I don't think Tennessee's a playoff team necessarily, but maybe they're a little better than we thought. And if he plays turnover-free football in big games, maybe Tennessee's knocking on the door of the playoff in late November. It's certainly not out of the question. Mobile quarterbacks that hit big plays in the passing game never go out of style. Aguilar kind of fits that profile. I think this is a team that you should at least consider. Again, I'm not predicting the Vols to go to the college football playoff at this point, but Aguilar did play very, very well. So that's a good sign for them. Also want to give a shout out to CJ Carr, although the Irish lost. He threw for over 200 yards in his first start as a redshirt freshman. He was pretty good, had a rushing score, and he had 2 passing scores. And how about Bryce Underwood at the University of Michigan? First game for his college career, true freshman. I know they didn't play great competition, but he stepped up and had some really good plays. There were a lot of young quarterbacks that did. I want to see them for a couple weeks before I really dive into CJ, Bryce, or anybody else. I wanted to focus on the transfers a little bit more today, but those guys, they deserve some credit too. They really do. And maybe, just maybe, one of these teams, whether it's Michigan, by the way, Michigan's got Oklahoma coming up. Very big game. We'll see how that goes. But maybe some of these guys can help their team possibly get in the playoff. Notre Dame still has a chance. Michigan obviously does. They won their game. But there are a lot of young quarterbacks we're going to see that are freshmen, redshirt freshmen. They're going to get a shot this year. Do not discount them just because of the year they are. Sometimes they surprise us. And it's why college football, as my good friend Spencer McLaughlin likes to say over there on the Locked On College Football channel, it's the greatest sport on earth. Young quarterbacks are one of the reasons why. It's just intriguing. To that point, we're going to finish up the show with 3 quarterbacks. There's no nice way to say it. They laid an egg in week 1. Will their teams make bowls? Will they disappoint? What's going to happen? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP. Who delivered? There were a lot of guys that I could have went by and said, this is my guy, but I'm going to go with Tommy Castellanos from Florida State because they knocked off Alabama, who was a 2-touchdown favorite in Tallahassee. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash, streaks saving more every time you order. These players, they delivered the most, but especially Tommy Castellanos. His offensive line was great for Florida State too. Let's break it down. How about the touchdown run to get Florida State on the board? How about the decisions to not turn the ball over? How about the decisions to throw the deep ball when he really needed to score white and put it on the money? The streaking pass to Javen Lucas. Tommy Castellanos, he was a streak himself, running down the field and just being fast. And, well, that's what DoorDash does too. It's a streak as well. You should keep your streak alive with DoorDash. And just like Tommy Castellanos delivered for the Noles, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. So if you want to check it out, make sure you go and check out DoorDash with all the fun things going on. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo code runs through November the 18th. All right, now we got to finish up with a few quarterbacks. These are transfer guys that I was kind of hopeful for, but I'm like, what's going on? And then just one just to add on that I thought was going to be really good this year. I just want to put him in. I don't understand. We'll get to him last. It's confusing. If you got comments about Kyron Jones, please let me know. But he's actually a returning quarterback. He's the only returner I'm talking about. But first off, Mark Gronowski, quarterback that transferred in 8 out of 15 for 53.3% for the Iowa Hawkeyes, 2.9 yards per attempt. There's pedestrian and then there's pathetic. Part of that's on the Iowa receivers and tight ends, running backs, etc. 2.9 yards per attempt. That's a number you would expect for a fullback in the red zone, running the ball. What on earth? 44 yards passing. 44. Really? That's insanely low. Anyway, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He did run for 47 yards, and he's a powerful guy, big guy. Mark Gronowski's not somebody you'd want to get in front of. But overall, pretty disappointing. to be really honest. Secondarily, Preston Stone. This is a quarterback that's been around. He was at one time at SMU. He's got some talent. Dallas area kid. He transferred to Northwestern. He might have had the worst day of anybody. Northwestern's not very good, and they went to Tulane and got just bludgeoned 23-3. But 19 of 36, 52.8%, 161 yards, only 4.5 yards per attempt. A little bit better than Gronowski, but this next part is atrocious. No touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 4. Again, I know he's not throwing to Jerry Rice in his prime and Randy Moss in his prime, but 4 picks means decision-making was probably not very good. May have had some bad luck. Maybe some receivers ran the wrong routes, but they weren't on the same page in general. There's bad, and then there's that offensive performance. Part of this is probably, again, overall, somebody wasn't in the right spot, pass protection, all those things. But 0 touchdowns and 4 picks and just getting trounced by Tulane, that's not a good start for the Northwestern Wildcats. And now the player that's just puzzling, and he's the only one on this list that isn't a first-year starter in his program, and it makes it even worse. Kyron Drones has a ton of talent. Big-bodied kid with a big arm. He's mobile. I thought he was going to be a dude last year. He faded. I thought, well, this year he'll take another, he's a veteran. He's a 4th-year player. He'll figure it out. Here are Kyron Drones' first game stats. And against South Carolina, a quality opponent, but 15 to 35, 42.9%. That is garbage. 221 yards, 6.3 per attempt, no touchdowns, 2 picks. 2 points. Number one, it takes 2 to tango. The receivers and tight ends, just like with Preston Stone, just like Mark Gronowski, probably didn't play very well. I will grant you that. But this is a guy that's been in the system for years. This is a guy that is a veteran, has all the arm talent. He's mobile. He's a big guy. Some of this responsibility has to fall on Drones, and maybe it's because I'm a little ticked. I thought he was going to be pretty good this year. He just struggle bust. There's no excuse for somebody with that level of physical skill to look like that. And 42.9 were the quarterbacks and pass catchers in any way, shape, or form on the same page. This is at least his 3rd year. There's no excuse. There's none. So while I talked about first-year guys at whatever program they're at this year throughout the podcast, and these are all portal guys for the most part, Drones was recruited there. It's been developed, and it's not working out. And by the way, the coaching staff deserves some of the, hey, what was that? Because there's no excuse for any quarterback to be in that situation. But we'll see. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, that sometimes even guys that are coming back, they're struggling. So a couple of points to wrap up the show. Just going over some of the teams that I went at. Florida State, I'm way up on them compared to where I was. Miami, not quite as much up as Florida State in terms of where trajectory from first game, but I had them higher than Florida State by a mile to start the year. I think those 2 teams, that game on October 4th is going to be a battle. It'll probably be a 3-point game. That is my guess. Darian Mensah, just going to throw this out there too. I think Duke is going to go over the 6.5 win total. No doubt. No doubt. And I also think they're a dark horse to make the ACC title game. They are, absolutely. He can spin it. He gets you out of trouble. And he creates plays on even 3rd and long. Like, he has the acumen to make the pass go where it should, when it should, the velocity, the trajectory. That's an NFL player. He could end up being a 1st-round pick and maybe even a high one. Darian Mensah is only a 2nd-year player, too. He's not even eligible for the draft after this year. Watch out for him. Carson Beck in Miami, already talked about it a little bit. Yeah, that's a team that has a playoff chance, an ACC title chance. No reason to think the Canes can't win 10 games. Joey Aguilar in Tennessee. This is the one I need to see more of, partially because of the receivers and tight ends and stuff, but he had a good start. If Tennessee continues on this trajectory, at the least, they're going to knock off somebody that's trying to get to the SEC title game. Bare minimum. That's going to be very, very interesting. Dante Moore in Oregon, I think that team is better than I anticipated, and it's due to him in large part. Now, the team effort, and they got a big game against Penn State soon and all that. But this is a team that can make the college football playoff and do something. I think they will be one of the teams that will end up with like a 7 to 9 seed, something like that. But nobody's going to want to play him because he'll have a full year under his belt, and he should be humming along. Watch out for Oregon come the college football playoff. And as for Iowa, Northwestern, and Virginia Tech, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. Those teams, I know Iowa's very well coached in general, but you just can't be throwing for less than 100 yards. They threw for less than 50. I need to see something there, or my early on thought of them winning like 8-9 games this year, probably not right. I thought that's about where they would be, but at some point you got to be able to throw the ball, and I don't know what's going on there. Preston Stone and Northwestern, they're toast. You can tell that team is going to be bad. That's a 3 or 4 win team, maybe in a very competitive Big Ten. Good luck. And then Kyron Drones with Virginia Tech. I don't know what to say, man. At this point, multiple years, that coaching staff's on the hot seat. It is not looking good. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of very unhappy people in Blacksburg all year, and that's probably going to lead to at least one big dismissal. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Truly appreciate you stopping in. We will see you all again very, very soon.